We understand the committee met today and it has signed off on a plan to begin repatriating some of those 9,000 Australians who are currently stranded in India once that May 15 ban lifts. Now, the ban has been in place since late April. It's due to expire on the 15th of May. And today, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said the government was on track to lift the ban on that date, although the government is still giving itself a little bit of wriggle room. But up until now, it's sort of been unclear how many and even how Australians in India would then be repatriated once that 2-week pause was lifted. So what we understand, and as you've mentioned, the details are expected to be announced on Friday, is that the government will start in a fairly slow and steady way. So we understand that once the ban lifts, one repatriation flight will leave Australia to bring approximately 200 passengers back here to Australia. Now, anyone who's on those flights will need to have returned 2 negative COVID tests before they fly. And once they arrive here, as you mentioned, they'll all be taken to the Howard Springs quarantine facility, which by next Saturday, by May 15, is expected to be nearly empty. Now, what is unclear at this stage is whether commercial flights will also be able to resume. We've heard from members of the Indian community here in Australia that about 5 to 6 commercial flights were basically cancelled when the ban was imposed. It's not yet clear whether those flights will be able to resume, but certainly the number of people coming from India will be drastically reduced. So before the ban, there were also 2 government charter flights a week. We understand it's likely there'll only be a maximum of 1 a week, especially in the initial phases, ultimately to ensure that the quarantine facilities can, cope with the demand, given that so many people returning from India had the COVID-19 virus.
Jane, do we know that of the 900 Australians listed as vulnerable, do we know whether they'll be given priority in this instance?
Yeah, they absolutely will. So of the 9,000 Australians who have registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs, about 900 are considered to be vulnerable. That can be due to their health or their economic circumstances. So they will certainly be given priority access. But what the government has started warning of today, and this is certainly a lesson that it learned last year when there were, tens of thousands of stranded Australians all around the globe, as soon as you start bringing some Australians back, well, the list continues to grow. So there are 9,000 who are registered right now. It's likely, or the government's expecting, that figure will grow once, Australians in India see that some of their, that other Australians are being repatriated.
The travel ban has been subject to legal challenges. Critics called it discriminatory, racist. Is the government standing by its assertion that it is in the national interest, Jane?
Yeah, well, I think the government looked at how voters responded to various border closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, you only have to look at the West Australian election to show that these hard borders were relatively popular when it was considered to sort of keep people safe. Where the government has been criticised in terms of going too far was making the travel illegal. So you've got 9,000 Australian citizens who are actually barred legally from coming back to Australia. So there were questions raised about what's the point of Australian citizenship? What are the rights that a passport actually affords you? So the government obviously was sensitive about that. And we saw the Prime Minister sort of walk back his remarks saying, it's unlikely, highly unlikely that there would ever be a prosecution, raising questions about, why it was made to be a criminal offence in the first place. But certainly the government is really standing firm that this 2-week pause was necessary because there were state concerns about the number of COVID cases coming from India going into hotel quarantine, and also supplementary to that, the Commonwealth is wanting to expand the Howard Springs facilities. So certainly the Prime Minister very much standing by the 2-week pause to give everyone some breathing room to clear space at Howard Springs in anticipation of the arrival of more Australians from India who are likely to have COVID-19.